All right, we are live, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of Let's Talk Lake County. I'm your host, David Rich. We have a very special and a recurring guest on today, Rob Hogan. Rob, how are you, sir?
I'm doing well.
Good. So Rob was it last year?
Yeah.
Rob is a tarot reader and medium and extraordinaire. And he came on the show last year and did a tarot read, which I thought was very cool. I got a lot of positive feedback on that. And so he reached out to me the other day, saw something, one of my posts about something, I don't even remember what it was, but said, hey, I've had some pretty cool experiences recently, some about being a medium, and asked if I would have him on. I'm like, I'll talk about this stuff all day, every day. So yeah, here he is. He's Rob Hogan, and he's going to tell us about some of the recent cool experiences he's had. What's up, Rob? Go ahead.
Hello, everyone. So I guess I'll start with a little bit of background. So about 6 years ago, I had a ruptured brain aneurysm, hemorrhagic stroke. And it runs in my family, and so I've had 3 people die from it in the past.
Oh.
And so when they woke me up in the hospital and said you have ruptured aneurysm, I was like, that's expected. It was not something that was unexpected. But while I was in the hospital, I spent 3 weeks in the neuro ICU. I would have all sorts of hallucinations, like I would see portals opening up to other places. I had a little creature that was visiting me. It got so bad that I actually asked the chaplain for the hospital to come bless the room because I didn't know what was going on. At this point, I was pretty agnostic and or atheist. Really didn't think there was much after death. When you died, that was about it. And then a couple of years ago, about 3 years ago, I started doing tarot readings for people. And slowly, as time progressed, I started getting some weird readings. One of the earliest ones that was kind of weird was I did a reading for someone. This was about 2.5 years ago, where I had a card come up that made me feel like there was a lost pet involved and that somebody may have been present as far as the spirit. And I knew some details that it may have been this person's father that was present. And as I'm giving the reading, I get boo-boo. I'm like, what does boo-boo mean? I just got this impression of the word boo-boo. And the woman was like, that was the name of my dad's outdoor cat that we had to go get after he passed away.
Wow.
And I'm like, okay, that's weird. How do I know boo-boo, And so as I'm doing readings, slowly these things started happening where I started just knowing really weird things about people's loved ones that have passed. Now, at this point, I've kind of embraced the mediumship over the last year. And I would probably say I've had about 130 experiences where I can't really explain how I know things that I know.
Right.
That's, a lot of people say that, maybe it's just blind luck. But I would say that my success rate's probably about 50%. 50% of the people say, hey, can you connect with somebody?
Okay, can I say something real quick on that? Quick, Rob? I studied statistics, probability theory, stuff like that. If you're at 50% success rate, it can't possibly be mere luck.
Yeah.
Mere luck is usually, it depends on what study you're doing or whatever else, or prediction you're trying to make, but it's usually under 10%. If you get below 10%, then they chalk it up as statistical they call it randomness.
Yeah, and the other weird thing is that I seem to be stronger when they want to connect with somebody specific.
Interesting.
And so, like when people are like, I want to connect with somebody specific, I don't front load any information. So I go into all my readings cold. The only thing I ask for is the person's name, and that's if the spirit's there, I call the spirit forward to communicate. That's the only thing I ask for. I don't want to know how they died. I don't want to know relationship. I don't want to know anything about them. I want to go into it very cold. The other thing is that if I don't get a connection, the way it usually works, visualizing, is that there's these strands out there. I kind of put myself into like a little bit of a trance, kind of like the place between awake and sleep, and go into like the alpha stage. And I get impressions that kind of come into my mind's eye from like the left side mostly, and I just say everything that's on my mind. And sometimes there are hits. Sometimes weird things come through. Not always, but frequent enough that it's like, wow, I don't know what's going on with this. I've had some at this point, as I said, I've had maybe about 130 of these, and some of the stories just get replaced with the newer stories that come up.
Wow.
And so I don't write them down. I don't keep track of them. A lot of people are like, you need to write a book about this, and it's like,
that'd be very cool.
It's just, but sometimes it's so personal that I don't want to share it, and so I ask permission from the people I share stories with. Is it okay if I tell people these stories, because they can be very personal? I like a couple of the stronger ones I've had. I had this one reading I did for a woman who immediately the name Bucky came through. And I'm like, okay, I feel like there's somebody coming through that you have a lot of anger towards that you don't want to talk to. She's like, oh yeah, there's a few of them. And I'm like, name Bucky mean anything? And she's like, yeah, Bucky. And I'm like, Bucky died from a head-on collision. He was drunk driving, she said, with a tree. Okay. And I'm like, I feel like he bled out and it took him a while to find him. And she's like, yeah, he was ejected from the vehicle. An artery was slashed and it took him 9 hours to find him. And then I go and say, what's the significance of the bull? She's like, my family used to own a bar and we had
You're breaking up, dude.
Oh, okay. Am I back?
Yep.
So I knew something about mechanical bull. Just once again, really weird things come through. I know that,
You're breaking up again.
Is it any worse?
You sound like a broken up like computer.
Okay, I'm good.
Okay, you're gonna go inside. All right, do what you got to do. We'll wait. That's fine.
Okay, here, let's try this. Is this any better?
Yes.
Okay. So back to the story. So I knew information about how he died. I knew his name. I knew that he liked a mechanical bull, and that's all kind of random stuff. I had another instance where I was doing a reading for somebody, and I'm like, this was just an open reading, not connecting to anybody specific. But I'm like, I sent somebody around you that took you to racetracks, drag strips. I smell a lot of times when this comes through, I get impressions in my mind's eye, but I also smell things. Sometimes I taste things. Sometimes I feel impressions. Like I've had a number of impressions where as soon as we contact somebody, I'm like, why does my neck hurt from one ear to the other ear underneath my neck? And they're like, he hung himself. I'm like, okay, that makes sense. But I'll get impressions like that. And this is once again, not front loading anything, not knowing anything about the individual that we're trying to contact. But yeah, so I had this one where I picked up things about a drag strip, and then I could taste hot dogs with mustard. And then I said, the individual used to wear a blue cap when you were a child, and he would take the brim of the cap and rub it back and forward on your head. Who was that individual? And they say that was my neighbor. Okay. And I'm like, your neighbor had a phrase. It was something about over under that he would say all the time, something about over under. And he said that one of his favorite phrases was get over it till you're under it. He would say it all the time. And then I go and say he had a inoperable 1960s Chevy Impala sky blue in his garage. And he said, yes, he did. He had a Chevy Impala.
Specific. Yeah.
Very specific information. And once again, these things just kind of shoot in. This couple weekends ago, I did readings for individuals at I was at the Chicago Steampunk Expo, and that was a hit. I think I did readings to connect with spirits for 4 people, and I connected on 3 out of the 4 at that weekend. And the first one was a woman who wanted to connect with somebody specific from her past, and I connected with this guy. And I'm like, okay, she told me that they were in high school together. And I'm like, wait, you played D&D together, Dungeons and Dragons? And she's like, yes, we did. And I'm like, he played a paladin class and you played a ranger class. And she said, yes, we did. Yes, we did. And then I go and say, he did something very personal in a costume party or something like that. And she's like, well, it was a costume shop. He asked me to prom, and I'm like, you said no. And she's like, yes, I did say no. And she's like, at that point though, I'm like, okay, I picked up an impression of an animal. Do you have 2 cats? And she said, yes, I do have 2 cats. And I'm like, one of them's a ginger cat. And she said, yes, it is. And I'm like, the ginger cat, does it stand in the house and yowl in a specific direction at something? And she said, yes. Like, I feel like it's yowling at this guy Ryan that you connect, that I feel like Ryan's in your house, the spirit. And I'm like, do you ever feel like somebody's laying in bed next to you? And she said, yeah, I get that sensation, but only when I'm not dating somebody. Okay. And then I go and say, Alfie. She's like, that is the name of my orange cat, Alfie. How do I know that? And once again, there's no negatives in between this, so these are all just positive response, not negative response in between. It's just all a string of positive responses. I had another one where I'm getting my stories. So I had another one where this a couple weekends ago where what was it? So we wanted to contact her father, and I couldn't quite get anything. I was trying them, like nothing was coming through. So we ended up, I don't push too hard. So if I push and nothing's coming through. But she wanted to know what was the nickname that he called her when she was a child. Her name was Cindy. Okay. So after we finished up, shortly thereafter, I got an impression of Susie Q came through. Nothing like Cindy whatsoever. The next day I saw her and I'm like, oh, does Susie Q mean anything? And her jaw dropped. She said Susie was my middle name and he would call me Susie Q all the time.
Wow. That's cool.
Okay. I had another one a couple weekends ago where I had I described a gentleman, tall, lanky, in the Navy, wore suspenders and smoked a pipe. And she's like, that was my grandfather. And then I go and say, Sweet Pea. And she's like, that's what you would call me, was Sweet Pea. And then I'm like, what's Button? And she goes, Buttons is what my dad used to call me. And I'm like, okay. So I got not only like what her grandfather would call her, but then, and once again, no negatives. There's no negative responses to just.
What do you mean by a negative response?
Negative response.
Your cat's name is Alfie, and you're going to die tomorrow. Like, what do you mean by?
No, negative response is like, okay, so let's pretend we're doing a moment here, and I'm like, does cupcake mean anything to you? No. Does Snooky mean anything to you? No. Does those are all negative responses, means that it doesn't mean anything.
Oh, I see. They say no. Okay, I got it.
Yeah. And so it's like, once again, these positive affirmations, the verifications that come through there's not a whole lot of fishing going on involved on my part to get the information. It just kind of comes out. Let's see what else. I mean, like I said, there's just so many stories.
That's a lot, right?
Yeah, I in January I did and so sometimes I taste things. I did a reading for somebody who wanted to contact somebody specific. Name was Michael. And I asked Michael to come forward, and I was drinking water at the time. And as I'm drinking the water, I'm like, this water isn't doing it for me. I feel like this should be whiskey, specifically Jameson whiskey, specifically Jameson. And she goes, well, Michael and I used to work at a bar together, and our shift drink was Jameson.
Nice.
And I was just getting this taste. And so it's weird, you know.
No, that's cool. I mean, it's definitely weird, but it's good weird, bad weird.
Yeah. And like I said, I've probably had about 130 of these in the last like 2 years. That's why sometimes it's when there's so many of them, it's hard to pull out the actual stories because there's so many. At this point, do you have any questions?
Well, I wouldn't mind a complete comprehensive explanation as to how it is you're doing this, but I don't think we're going to get that there.
No,
not today. But okay. So, but like, do you have any sort of like any other medium type experiences with like, I don't know if this would count as medium or not. Do you see ghosts? Do you have any sort of like that?
Well, to clarify, so getting into the, as I said, if you have talked to me years ago, I was pretty agnostic or atheist. So there is the cynic in me trying to figure out, are people just telling me what I want to hear? Do they just really want this to be the case? So they just say yes to things. And I try to minimize the method, because I think that there are people out there that take advantage of people. And there are certain ways of doing it. Front loading is one of them. Okay. Front loading is, you go to a medium psychic and they're like, who do you want to contact? Where do they live? What do they do for a living? And they try to fish for all this information. So that before they connect, they have all this background information. I do the opposite. I don't want to know anything. But to get back to your question, so if you believe that there are things as mediums and psychics, there's a difference between them. A psychic can pick up information from other people. A medium can pick up information from somebody that's passed along. Okay. So one of the things is, am I picking up information just from someone's memories and not communicating with somebody that's passed along? But I've had a number of circumstances where information I've said, like I had one time where I was like, okay, where's this person's their ashes? And they'd be like, oh, it's at my mom's house. I'm like, is it in a red box? Is it surrounded by red? And she had to confirm and call, and oh yes, the room has a lot of red in it. It's a red room. I'm like, okay, that makes sense. And so there are times where things are confirmed, but the person I'm reading does not know it. Does that make sense?
Absolutely, 100%.
Yeah.
Where do seances fall into this whole thing?
Seance is there's another word for it's a gallery reading, which I do. Gallery reading is really, there's two things. So a gallery reading is, I do those pretty frequently. That's where I open up to anybody that's present, any spirits present, to come forward. I just throw out random information. And as the random information comes out, what we're looking for is, sometimes I'll have somebody where it's like, yes, that's true, no, yes, no, yes. And that's not a strong connection for me, Seance is asking for a specific individual to come forward. And it's like doing a reading just with more people around.
Do you use the tarot deck every time you do this, or is it just sort of like wait for
I actually stopped using the tarot deck for doing my connections with individuals. I don't use the tarots anymore. I do for other readings, but not for connecting with spirits. I had this one gallery reading that I was doing where it was last October. I connected with an individual, and during a gallery reading, during a seance, and after that, everybody that was there wanted their own connection. And I had like 8 people in a row, and every single one of those 8 people connected with the individual they wanted to connect with. And once again, that's me knowing the way that they died, specific things about their death, specific things about their life, just knowing weird stuff. The last woman, I was so tired from this, and all I did was I held her hand and I picked up, and I'm like, okay, I got a sense. I started rubbing her hand a very specific way, and I said, this, you held somebody's hand in the hospital and you did this. They were in the hospital for a long time. They were in the hospital for such a long time that you had to shave them. You physically shaved their face. Who was that? And she said, that was my husband.
Wow.
And it was just a strong connection that came through, and that was the extent of the questions I asked. That was the extent of the communication that came through. So no cards were used. It was just through feeling what came up. Now here's a really weird thing. I know I've mentioned a lot of weird things, but when I connect with somebody, I'm in the way that their loved one.
You're breaking up again.
Oh, I moved my phone. Is this better?
Yep.
Okay. I show affection the way that the loved one shows affection. So I always offer a hug afterwards because they can become very emotional. And whether it's a hug with a sway or just a handshake type thing, a two-handed handshake, or like sometimes I have somebody who just stomps their feet and runs to somebody and picks them up in a bear hug. Sometimes it's head to head, cheek to cheek, holding the head, like whatever it is that their loved one showed affection is how I show affection.
It's interesting. Yeah, no, I get you. That's very cool.
Yeah, it's really weird. Now, as far as I think that back to your original question, do I see ghosts or stuff? I think that I have a hard time being in public around a lot of people. I think I pick up like being a concert or something like that. I think I pick up all that energy of everything that's around. I have a couple friends that own a paranormal site, and I go there and people are like, do you pick anything up? And I'm like, I'm always picking something up, but it lacks context. Like I could tell you that person misses their cats, but we don't know who that is. We don't know what, now for me, physically seeing things, it's more like I see them in my mind's eye,
right?
If that makes sense.
Yeah,
I get feelings for things. I pick up sensations about people. But yeah.
That's very cool. I'm getting actually people who are friends of mine across the country who are watching this episode or
oh, hello, everyone. Do we have any questions?
No, he's just commenting on how his own wants of how cool it would be if he could experience these things.
Yeah.
So thank you, Matt. Matt's, I won't say his last name. Matt's an old friend of mine from like the 90s. We worked at TGI Fridays together, and we were like inseparable. But he lives out west now. So thank you for watching, sir. Yeah, no, that's very cool stuff, Rob. So how can people get a hold of you, like if they want to use your talents?
So if they want to get a hold of me, they can just do a search for Rob Hogan artist. I'm on the internet. I have a pretty wide information out there. My email is rob.hogan3@gmail.com. And let's see what else. Or like, I don't mind giving my number. My number is 773-263-7650.
Okay.
So you can either call or you can text. I don't per se charge for my things that I do. I ask for tips. So there's I know some mediums have a set amount. I just feel weird asking for specific amounts. So I've gotten tips everywhere from $7 to $100, or I mean 7 cents to $100 rather. I just mainly feel like there's a reason I've been gifted whatever it is that's going on. It's to bring peace to individuals, and so I just like to help individuals out. I've actually been invited to participate in a couple home cleansings, if you will, for haunted homes, which has been an experience itself. So
very cool.
But yeah,
Well, all right, very cool. You're breaking up a little bit at the end there again.
it doesn't like when I put my phone down. Like right here is the spot that it works.
That's the sweet spot right there. Okay, cool.
Yeah.
Cool. Well, it's been about a half an hour anyway, so that was a lot of really interesting things there. I mean, the very specific, the car color in the garage and that kind of thing, the name of a cat and the name of the grandfather looked and the names that they're coming, I mean, I think that like mediums and psychics get criticism from skeptics because, like how vague they can be, sometimes, like, like, oh, it's going to rain tomorrow. Well, okay.
Yeah.
Cool.
I would love for somebody. Yeah, I would love for somebody.
My buddy has a question. I do have a question from Disney.
Okay.
So, okay, that's a good question. Have you ever had an interaction, a sense from something as a spirit or someone that is, it's just so sad and awful and traumatizing that you don't say it to the person in front of you?
So I've gotten the question, is there a hell? And I've gotten the question, are people in hell? And this is just my experience from the 130 spirits I've interacted with, is that hell is what we bring with us into the afterlife. So I've had individuals who there's no set. I think it's different for every single person. I've had individuals who have had mental health issues that they're still working on, and I think that that's the saddest that it's been. I've had a couple times where people have had really sad messages, like, okay, you have to talk to the sister. And they'd be like, you know what that means? And they're like, yeah, I haven't talked to my sister in months. I'm like, okay, whoever's coming through says you have to talk to your sister. So I'm not even talking about the messages that come through. I've gotten messages like, don't trust the doctors. And they're like, oh yeah, well, we currently have a lawsuit going on. Okay, interesting. So sometimes I get messages from people that are very specific. I would say that that's the saddest thing is when spirits are still dealing with, because we all hope that when we go to the afterlife that whatever we're dealing with we don't have to deal with anymore. But I have a feeling that sometimes people still need to work through their SHIT, that they quite haven't worked.
You can say shit on the show, but it's okay.
Yeah, they haven't quite worked through their shit and they still have to work through it. Now, that being said, I have not ever had the feeling that people have been in hell. I have had the feeling people have been in heaven. And here's where it gets really weird. I think that people can be reincarnated. They could be in heaven and they could be a spirit all at the same time. I don't know how it works. It just, I feel like somehow the spirit stuff works different on the other side of the veil. And you can have somebody that's in heaven but still visiting as a spirit and being reincarnated at the same time. I think that the ancient Norse used to believe that spirits could be fractured, and maybe there's something to that. But there's, I'm not even getting into past life readings I've done, which have been really weird. Cool. Yeah. I think weird, stuff is just weird on the other side.
Well, yeah. Well, it's because we're not really in this incarnation, in this body, we're not familiar with it. Our souls are familiar with it. Yeah. We have to kind of get back in touch with that. Well, very cool. It's been a half an hour. Cool. Don't go after I stop the show. Stay on. I want to ask you a question, just my own personal interest. So Rob Hogan, check him out. Just Google Rob Hogan artist. You live in Mundelein, right?
Yep.
So type in Mundelein if that helps. Get to him, and very cool. So Rob, thanks for coming out, for reaching out and coming on and sharing. I love this stuff. I really do. I spent
thanks for having me.
These kinds of things and being interested in these kinds of things. And I've had plenty of my own. I've never considered myself a psychic or a medium or anything like that, but I've had lots of really wild experiences that transcend my understanding for sure. So very cool. So all right. Thank you again, Rob Hogan. Everybody, thanks for tuning in to Let's Talk Lake County. Till next time, which is Friday. Keep talking. All right.
Take care.
Hold on one second.